Coming up this week, we're going to be chatting with Lucas Holt, the founder of Midnight BSD. It's a slightly lesser-known fork of FreeBSD with a focus on easy desktop use. We're going to find out what's different about it and why it was created, and of course, answers to your emails and all this week's news on BSD Now, the place to be, SD. BSD Now, episode 92, BSD After Midnight, recorded June 3rd, 2015. Hey, I'm your host, Chris Moore.
And I'm Alan Jude.
And we're glad to have you guys with us this week. We got another exciting episode coming straight at you here on the eve of BSDCan. I guess we, less than a week, Alan. Mm-hmm. Shoot, I probably should get my talk finished and slides done.
Does help.
It's been one of those busy weeks. I have a feeling I'm going to be doing that either on the plane or shortly after arriving, but it's all good. I gave the talk in Tokyo, so it's 80% the same, and then the other 20% I'll do on the way.
as George Neville Neal said on IRC, I think last night, if you're not working on your slides during the Dev Summit, you're doing it wrong.
That's right. That's right. I get the feeling this is going to be one of those conferences for me. There's just so much to do at home before heading up there.
I'm running a working group at the Dev Summit, so I had to have slides for the Dev Summit on top of slides for the conference.
Speaking of which, did you add me to the list of your working group members? Fantastic. I need to go email everyone else and get myself on the other ones that I'd like to be a part of.
Yeah. There's a ZFS one.
I'm lazy.
But it's at the same time as the libzo one. And since I think I got most of the ZFS information from Matt in Tokyo, I will probably go to that one instead.
Okay. Oh, cool. Well, I will have to make some choices here soon. Hard decisions which ones to go to, but we'll figure it out.
Luckily, for the first time ever, the Dev Summits are going to be recorded and posted as well.
They live streaming them?
I don't know about the live stream. That's hard to say because of the internet at the university and so on.
Yeah.
But they definitely will have recordings, and as with always with BSDCan, they come out quite reliably, quite quickly.
That's great.
Yes.
Well, you guys will look forward. You really should. If you've not watched a Dev Summit before or been to one, it's a lot of fun. Personally, I enjoy the Dev Summits more than the actual presented papers, just because there's more back and forth and discussion and people giving their opinions and arguing a little bit about that.
Things
about
that would be
the future of BSD goes.
Things that would be impolite to yell out during somebody's presentation.
Yes, you get a little bit more of that at the Dev Summit, which I just find a lot more fun. Yeah. Anyway, so if you guys are coming out, or if you can, remember, Ottawa next week. Look forward to seeing you there. Me and Alan will both be there. Tuesday, you come in, right, Alan?
No, I get there Sunday.
Oh, you're going?
Yeah,
early.
Ed Mass and I are driving, and so... Yeah.
That's right. Well, you guys enjoy that, and I will join you guys sometime Tuesday afternoon. I think early afternoon is when I arrive. But, in the meanwhile, we got a show to get to today, guys, but we're just excited about BSDCan, so we can't help but talking about that a little bit.
I've been looking forward to it all year.
I know, right?
It is still my favorite, probably partly because it was my first one ever, but even outside of that, just the Hacker Lounge, I definitely like it.
Well, I got to give it my favorite, just in particular because it's one of the biggest, I think the biggest BSD conference. If I don't know if Euro's been bigger than that or
Euro
not recently.
has been bigger a couple of times recently.
Okay.
But this year
it's the biggest,
quite big for BSDCan even.
It's the biggest close to me, and it's in the same time zone.
Yes.
It's a shorter flight than even going to the West Coast.
So much.
That's a big deal. That is, yes. It's nice to get there and not be tired and exhausted and have the first couple of days ruined due to jet lag. So it's definitely one well worth going to. And looking forward to VBSDCon this year.
Also same time zone exactly.
For me. Okay, well let's get into these headlines here, Alan.
It's been a big buzz for quite a few days.
So first up, we got a Zocker. What the heck is Zocker? You're saying? Well, it's like Docker, except on FreeBSD, of course, and I imagine the Z for ZFS. But as you guys know, containment and jails and all that relevant technology has been a lot of a hot topic recently. And of course, on Linux, Docker's been getting a ton of hype in the last couple of years. Well, it looks like they're working on native FreeBSD support at the moment, but the blog post we're highlighting here today is more about a Docker-like script, mainly for ease of use, and it uses jails and ZFS in the base system to provide the similar Docker-like functionality that you would see on your Linux system.
So, do they have actual images, or?
It looks like he says you can push or publish them, and then search. I was reading through it a little bit here on GitHub, and I'm not quite sure where the repo is or where that comes from, but that's I need to look into that. I'm curious to see where the repo is located and all that. And he said you can push the private ones as well, so you don't have to use their public repo. But need to play with that.
I don't know if I'm reading this right. They actually use the Docker repo, and they actually use like the Docker file format. Possibly.
Oh, interesting.
I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, that would be weird because it looks like this is mainly a shell script. They said it's about 1,500 lines of shell script, so I'm not sure how they would read the Docker file.
I've never actually looked at the Docker file format to know what it is.
It's a kind of a black box at the moment. It's closed. You don't get to see what's in it until you run it.
That's horrible. But
a little iffy. But I think one of these technologies, whether it be Zoc or Jetpack or one of these on FreeBSD is going to be really cool because especially if they keep it more open and focus on security and jails and whatnot. So I'm curious to take a look at what he's doing.
My biggest question, I suppose, is how do you make a Docker image that will be like agnostic to what version of FreeBSD the person's running on their host? Or do you have to have, if I publish a Docker image, do I have to make a 9 to 10 and an 11 version of it or something?
Well, I would imagine you can run old jails.
Yeah, so I guess you would just target
you have to run something older than what your current kernel is. That would probably be the limitation, which isn't unreasonable.
Really.
I mean, for example, for the entire 10 series, I would probably just roll a 10.0 jail and just update packages in it and whatnot. Exactly. And as long as we're back applying the security updates to 10.0, like who cares? You're not running the kernel.
Exactly. And everything else is pretty fungible. The only downside to running the 9 branch currently is the OpenSSL in base doesn't support TLS 1.2 and so on. But
that's true. That is true. But this post that we're highlighting here, if you want to take a look at it, goes through the process of using the tool, showing off how you set it up, the subcommands. The only kind of gotcha is that it looks like it still has to compile the world from source. I guess somebody should patch that in where it just fetches it right from the mirrors or whatever.
It's
that would
really
be a heck of a lot easier.
Easy to grab the archives off the FTP site and extract them to get an install.
Steal that from Warden or IOCage or something. Those are shell scripts as well. And they do that.
Poudreur's jail management stuff is all right there and is all, the best way to do it because it's modern and was written with, FreeBSD 10 and 11 in mind.
There you go. Yeah. So that would probably be the only gotcha I'd see. And the other thing is when you're setting up the jails, it doesn't do automatic network configuration yet. So you still got to supply a IP address and set up your route.
Right. Well, unless you're using like VNet or whatever or vImage, you won't be able to run DHCP to do it automatically anyway, right?
Yep, that's something else that we'll have to see land in Zocker at some point. I know. So I've been talking to the IOCage guys about putting some similar functionality into IOCage because that could be really handy. Yeah. Especially when we flip vImage on for 10.2.
Interestingly, they say in contrast to EasyJail, which is still using the old shell variables system, Zocker uses the jail.conf system in FreeBSD 10, which is good, but also it's like I wish people wouldn't use that because I really want to redo it all and make it completely different.
Well, if I could promote the IOCage guys a bit, they use ZFS properties for everything. Yes, so you're not setting any .conf files or anything. I think that's a much better way to go.
ZFS is really cool because of that. Yeah, I imagine maybe the Zocker guys do they depend exclusively on ZFS or do they allow you to use UFS? It seems like it's with the Z in the name, it's probably mostly targeted at ZFS. So
that would be my guess. And if you're trying to do this on UFS, you're doing it wrong, I guess. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like it does ZFS snapshots. Yeah, jails and ZFS. So that's your option, your only option there. That's fine.
I've switched which snapshot management tool I use on FreeBSD after reading Michael Lucas's did a kind of a rundown of a bunch of different ones. And the one I like part of the reason is because instead of a .conf file, you just store the properties in the ZFS properties or the configuration there. So it's easy to just put a property on a data set to say, hey, don't bother snapshotting this, or snapshot this one more, or whatever I want to do. And that automatically inherits to children, but I can go into a grandchild and say, hey, this one, I don't need no snapshots.
Don't care about that.
It's like the ports tree, I don't really need snapshots of that. The source tree, I might be working on some code, so I would like snapshots every 15 minutes, but I don't need week-old snapshots on the source tree. Whereas, one of the other ones, it was the opposite. It's like, I might want some really old files, but I don't need all the new churn and stuff like that.
Oh, nice. Well, yeah, that's cool. I'd say ZFS snapshots and ZFS properties in general just make utilities like this so much cooler and easier to manage and control. Yep. But anyway, this is so Zocker again. Take a look. It looks like a work in progress here and still actively being developed. So if you guys are interested in some kind of Docker-like functionality on FreeBSD, go take a look at this. See if this starts to scratch that itch for you. Okay, well, next up we have news about OpenBSD. It looks like Patrol Read, and I had to look this up to see what they were talking about
so
when I read this.
This is basically kind of like a scrub that's done for hardware RAID.
Yeah, so they've imported some new code that'll be in, of course, the next release of OpenBSD to do Patrol Read function on RAID controllers.
Specifically MFI, which is the LSI, one of their controllers.
So we have a link to the Intel, one of the Intel pages where you can take a look at some of that on the controller as well. But of course, the goal of this is to protect your file integrity by detecting failures before they start damaging your data, of course, which is the point.
It's basically just kind of quickly walk through the volume and read some chunks off the disk to make sure that the disk is still there and working and so on. So it basically looks for when your system's not too busy and starts doing a patrol read. Obviously, these can also be configured like directly in the firmware or like in the the BIOS screen that you get for the RAID controller. But it's really nice to have the support in the operating system, even if it's just to know when it's doing it. Because like all of a sudden my disk seems slower than usual. Oh, I see right there in my log that a patrol read started, and it'll be done in a couple hours and it'll be fine. Or maybe I decide I want to cancel it because now is really not a good time.
Yeah, let's do that at 2 a.m. when I don't care or something. But it looks like this was added based on some of the FreeBSD work, but done with that MFI util. So OpenBSD has customized that a bit to make it fit what they want it to do. But it looks like it's added to the BIO CTO, and MFI command.
Yes. Nice. I think that's actually a typo. I think it's supposed to be BIO CTL.
Oh, so CTL. Yeah, that probably is.
Yeah, looking CTL. At
that is a typo.
The modified files and stuff. But yeah. Right, because those are the layers where you would actually send the hardware commands through, and then MFI is the driver.
Okay.
But interesting to see OpenBSD getting support for that. That's good.
Yeah, that is nice. So next up, speaking of disks, files, and file systems, we got some Hammer 2 improvements to mention here. So, of course, Dragonfly BSD has been busy at work on their second generation of the Hammer file system. And interestingly enough, they now have imported LZ4 compression by default. Yes. Which, of course, on ZFS land, that's like really cool and a big deal. So it's neat to see that they're doing that.
Yeah,
now.
It just works really well for compressing stuff with moderate gains very, very quickly. And they've also set that to be the default compression for all new pseudo file systems that you create. Whereas before they used the auto zero, which basically only detected sparse files and saved. It would compress giant strings of zeros, kind of like the ZLE compression in ZFS, but really didn't provide any compression on your actual files. So it's interesting to see them adopting LZ4 by default, which is not something that ZFS has decided to pull the trigger on yet.
Yeah, why don't we just do that? I mean, so we set it on PCBSD by default, but it would be just nice if it just did it automatically, right? But it looks like they've also added switched to a new faster CRC. So furthering the performance gains they're getting on Hammer 2. So it looks like they got a faster iSCSI CRC algorithm, and then we got a link here to some of the differences benchmark-wise with it and without it.
Cool.
With the old, with the new, and with no CRC at all. So they did get some nice performance gains there.
Yeah, it's interesting there because I don't normally the checksumming in ZFS doesn't seem to have that big of a performance impact.
I wonder which which checksum cipher or algorithm they're using here, and which one ZFS is on.
ZFS is defaults to Fletcher 4.
Fletcher, okay. Okay, well, yeah, that's definitely interesting. So if you guys want to hit up the links there and take a look at the code, see exactly how they're doing that, we, of course, will have that in the show notes afterwards. So next up, we have FreeBSD Foundation has published their May update. So we got a link to the PDF where you can download and read that. It looks all pretty because, of course, it's in PDF form. But they've published another update newsletter detailing some of the things they've been up to recently. And there's, of course, some notables in there, specifically some of the ARM64 work, which has begun to land, and then the addition of 64-bit Linux emulation.
Yes.
Which I'm excited to see that. Now, have you heard yet of those changes in stable or coming to 10.2? Please?
I have no idea about that.
Do I need to bug people at BSD can and then beg and plead?
We should definitely talk to people and see if it's possible or not.
They haven't frozen. Now they go to ports or slush right after BSD.
Like a week after BSD can, we go into slush. Okay. It's still allowed. It's just they're like, please don't do any new features. It's like
basically, I need to get the keys to the hacker lounge and lock everyone in and tell them they're not coming out until this gets back.
Sadly, the Dmitry engine that did the work won't be able to make it to BSD can.
Bummer.
He can't fly at all, so going almost anywhere is actually an issue for him.
Oh, okay. Well, still, it would be nice, Dmitry, if you plan on backporting this, or if somebody else is going to. That would be great to have in 10.2.
Hopefully, by before BSD can is over, we'll commit the CentOS 64-bit ports.
Okay.
So those will be available.
Oh, and that would be a shame to have to wait to use those with a .11.0 released a year away. Come on, let's get this in 10.2 so we can use it the next couple months. But we will, of course, let you guys know when we find out what's going to happen with that. But additionally, they've also made some improvements to the release building process for non-x86 architectures.
Yes, Glenn has been working on that quite a bit.
Nice. And they also got a Asia BSDCon recap. So if you haven't heard about that or looked at any of the presentations, there's a recap of how some of the presentations and developer events went there. And of course, we have an accompanying blog post where Glenn Barber's talking about sysadmin and cluster administration work over at NYI.
Yes.
So if you want to hear about what's happening there, definitely take a look.
Looks like some nice server porn in there too. They got, they're basically looking at transitioning all of the core functionality of the actual cluster stuff out of an old site to NYI, where more people on the cluster admin team can access it, and also just replacing some of the older hardware with beefier stuff, specifically so that developers can do the make universe and other tests to make sure that the change they committed and tested on their computer doesn't also break ARM or something, and that kind of stuff. So there are quite a few big things coming up there soon.
There are a number of pictures there too.
We got a warning email from cluster admin that they're going to have to change. They're going to change the way we actually commit code to FreeBSD in the coming weeks as well.
Okay. Well, actually, this is a good segue. If you're looking at those pictures there, you might notice that they have a nice little iX Systems logo on them.
Yes.
Hey, what are the odds of that? But iX Systems, of course, is providing the hardware for some of that work over at the NYI site. And we have a link here, of course, so you'll want to hit up ixsystems.com/BSD Now and go check it out and see what you guys can purchase for your server rack. And have those similar looking boxes with that shiny iX Systems logo on it. You need to get some of those.
I have many. They're good.
All right. I know. I got to go tour a data center while I was in California, just full of iX Systems gear. Nice. It was pretty stinking incredible.
Can you say whose stuff it was?
It was. I don't know if I can say. I'll have to ask first to see if we're allowed to say. So, but yeah, it was a very nice data center in the Bay Area, just chock full of iX Systems stuff that they were switching from another provider. So
and
it was
if you want to know why you should switch, you can grab this handy, the ultimate guide to buying a new server for open source. And when it says open source, it doesn't mean only BSD. They do have all the stuff for Linux as well, even though you should use BSD, but not everybody's perfect.
Yeah, that's right. And for other reasons, you have to use Linux. You can do that. So speaking of, the folks that I toured with are maybe coming on the show here in a future week. They're working on some details to make that happen.
Yes.
So we'll maybe get to interview him. He will be at BSD Can though as well. So I'll introduce you on. But Good stuff. So, of course, guys, we got an accompanying blog post here too about IX Systems expanding. I don't know if you've got that up on the screen here,
Yes, I
Alan.
love this one they have here where they tried the double stacking of the desks.
Yeah, that just seems like that would violate some workplace safety or something. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
that's just not allowed. And I don't think sitting on the top of a ladder there is very ergonomic either.
Right. Yeah. Well, hey, I was going to mention that. So the new offices, if you take a look at the
Mm-hmm.
pictures here, that's actually where I broadcast from last week.
Yes.
I was in the one of the conference rooms when we did the show last week, and very, very tired. So I think I got like 4 hours sleep every night while I was out there. But yeah, glad to be back home. But yeah, their new offices, very, very
Mm-hmm.
nice, and they are definitely growing. A lot more new support people will be in there, and of course QA and developers and everything in between. But of course, IX Systems, you need to go there, let them know what you need, talk to their sales engineers, and get you guys hooked up with whatever it is, whatever platform, whatever it is you're trying to do in your particular business. Talk to the guys there. Explain to them what you're doing so that they can help you build the correct solution to get the best performance and best bang for your buck.
That's the big thing is that you're not just buying hardware, you're buying a solution to your problem. And if you can actually explain to them what your problem is, they can do a much better job than anybody else at actually coming up with the right solution for you.
That's right. So again, guys, ixsystems.com/BSD Now. Let them know that we sent you. We'd appreciate that. Okay, well, we're joined now by Lucas Holt, who's the founder of Midnight BSD, who's here to talk to us a little bit about that. So first of all, thanks for coming on the show today, Lucas. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Cool. Well, go ahead and give us your background. How'd you first get into BSD, and what brought you to this point?
Well, I used to be a sysadmin many years ago, and I worked at an internet service provider, and we started playing with BSDI, and then I kind of went through a whole bunch of operating systems, but I got into NetBSD and then FreeBSD, and I just really enjoyed using BSD and started using it as a desktop and a server platform.
Nice. Okay. So what year was this approximately when you started?
Probably around 2000 or so.
Okay.
Yeah,
so wow, good 15 years now. Nice.
So kind of in a nutshell, could you tell us what Midnight BSD is and how it got started?
Okay. Midnight BSD is a desktop operating system. The original plan was to kind of make something Mac-like, so really easy to use, user-friendly, kind of a free version of Mac OS, in other words. And it kind of started because I was using FreeBSD as a desktop environment as my primary OS for a long time, and I really liked it. I was using GNOME and playing around with GNU Step a little bit at the time. And I just saw a lot of kind of pushback in the community back then in terms of desktops, and you know, there's a lot of focus on the server platform, and so I kind of got the idea that I kind of needed to do something and get BSD kind of out there for desktop users.
Okay. So on Midnight BSD, I know you do your releases a little different. So how do you do releases? Do you track current stable release, or is the concept of the upstream versions not a big deal?
It's kind of not a big deal. So when we started, I used like FreeBSD 6.1 beta, I believe is the original version. And we've since merged in FreeBSD 7 and FreeBSD 9.1, kind of track that. And then we have a lot of customizations on it. And that's mostly been due to the fact that our project is very small and we just don't have the developers to do everything.
Yeah. I understand that for sure.
Yeah.
So, or how or in what way has your code diverged over the years? What are some of those custom things you've done?
Well, we've mostly done a lot of work with like package manager ports, things like that. But there's a lot of differences. We have the sensors framework, more like the version in Dragonfly, so it's a couple years out of date compared to OpenBSD. There's a lot of customizations in terms of different settings for syscontrols and just default settings, things like that. IPFW is our default firewall, and that's enabled by default, things like that.
So what would you say some of the design goals are of Midnight BSD, or what would it typically be a best use case for?
Well, right now it's primarily useful for probably people that are developers and kind of can get in and hack things. We haven't done a 1.0 release yet, so I'm not advertising this as ready for production use or for end users yet. So kind of people like that. Long term, I'd hope that anybody can use the system. I'd like to be able to just throw it in front of someone, kind of the ideals that like PCBSD or Ubuntu or any desktop environment has.
Mm-hmm. So just out of my own curiosity, how are you guys handling Xorg stuff? Are you guys pulling those bits from FreeBSD, or are you getting it from other BSDs? Or
right now we're heavily tracking FreeBSD.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm starting to look into doing some of that myself, but up to this point, it's all FreeBSD.
Okay. So what are some of the features of Midnight BSD that might make it stand out from all the other BSDs that are available?
Well, there's a lot of additional utilities in the system. So say that you come from an OpenBSD background, for example. A lot of the early developers that I had worked on OpenBSD, so we brought in a lot of utilities, and there's things like spell check, and we have mirk shell, and MDNS responder, libdispatch, our import tool, our package manager. We have kind of a custom search tool built in that we've been working on. So it's a bunch of little things, really. There's not one big thing.
Okay. So you mentioned imports. So explain that to us. What is imports on Midnight BSD, and how does it work, or what makes it unique or different?
Okay. Imports started out as kind of a fork of the FreeBSD ports tree. And so one of the first things that we did is we developed what we call Fake, which is really similar to Stage that they've added to FreeBSD ports recently in the last year or so. So the idea is that it stages the content into a directory, and so every single port is turned into a package first and then installed from the package in imports.
Sure.
And then we actually made our system modular too. So we had, kind of now when you look at FreeBSD ports, you see like uses, and there's all these different little extensions that get loaded. We had the same kind of concept in our ports tree that we've had for some time. So it's just kind of a way to refactor it and clean it up so that we'd have more control over it for our own package manager.
So have you guys expanded the old package tools that were in FreeBSD, or borrowed anything from package ng, or?
No, neither. So we completely started from scratch.
Oh, really? Okay.
Our package tool is written in C. It uses SQLite for everything. So every package actually has a SQLite database in it with all the assets and everything in there. And then it's merged into the main master. And then there's an index that's pulled that's also a SQLite database. So you can do SQL queries against everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
A package is a little bit different. I guess it has a SQL database for the repo and one for what you have installed, but then the metadata in each package is just a UCL file instead. Cool. And so do you have binary packages for imports?
Yes. So the import tool can install binary packages, and those are developed. We have our own cluster software that we use to build packages with.
Okay.
That's cool.
How many, just out of curiosity, how many ports do you guys have in your tree or packages at this point?
Ports, we have close to 3,000. We're actually going through a major overhaul and updating a bunch of stuff. So at the moment, a lot of packages are actually broken, unfortunately. We have probably 1,800 right now on AMD 64.
Sure. Is AMD 64 the only platform, or you guys still support the i386?
We still support i386, but it's kind of a backup platform. We encourage people to use the AMD 64 platform at this point.
Okay.
So being a fork from a bit older version of FreeBSD, what's the hardware support like?
Well, we've backported a lot of things. I think at the moment we're behind on video, certainly for Xorg. So like we haven't merged in the Radeon stuff for AATI cards yet, or there's a couple of things that we're behind on, but it's not horrible. BSD in general is kind of behind in hardware support for desktop use, I think. That's a goal I think all of us have, is to move forward on that.
I think we need to steal some of the Dragonfly stuff if we can. We said, what was it, last week, that they just got Broadwell support.
Yeah, they're already on Broadwell.
It's killing me.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're doing some good work over there in some areas.
Yeah, definitely. So if somebody wants to get involved with the project, what's the best way to get involved? And are you looking for anything specific?
We'd like help in anything, honestly. Ports, source, documentation, you name it. You could either email me or get in our IRC channel and talk to me, and that's usually the first step into getting involved.
Where's your IRC channel?
On Freenode, we have a Midnight BSD channel.
Okay, cool. Dave01 in the chat room asks, what FreeBSD release are you currently based on?
The last two releases have been based on FreeBSD 9.1.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on?
Like I said, we're currently doing a major refactor in our ports tree and our packages. So I'd expect in a couple of months that we'll be stable again on that front. And then my goal for the next release is actually to start working more on user-facing things, the desktop environment install, the user-facing stuff that everyone wants and it kind of expects at this point.
Sure. So out of curiosity, do you guys you still using GNOME, or do you have a different desktop environment, or?
Actually, I was going to use kind of a custom environment running on top of GNU Step, but now I'm actually considering the possibility of using XFCE.
Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, very nice. So, which login manager? I'm a desktop guy, so I'm curious about all these things. So, which login manager are you guys using?
Historically, we've used Slim. I'm looking into switching to GDM right now.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
The other question I had was, do you have a roadmap or a plan of when you might pull in a newer version of FreeBSD? Like 10.2 is slated to come out at the end of August.
Not yet. Actually, anytime I pull in a new version, it's like 6 months to a year to actually get it stable. Right. So I try not to do that too often. I want to focus on the user-facing aspects for a while and not do that. So I might consider pulling in bits and pieces of 10, but I'm not going to do the whole thing anytime soon.
Yeah, I guess the only really compelling feature of 10 is Beehive, I suppose.
And it's awesome, but it's not as useful in a desktop environment.
Yeah, it's not quite to that point yet. And I guess there was...
well, do you use any ZFS stuff?
Yeah, that would be the other big one.
Yes, definitely.
So your installer, I assume, you're not using the old FreeBSD installer. You guys have custom written something?
We haven't replaced the installer yet. I've customized it heavily, and we're on the BSD install stuff now. I got rid of sysinstall, so...
Nice.
I'll have to take a look at
ZFS on root and all that.
Interesting things you might have done with BSD install.
Not too much, but sysinstall was a lot more customized actually than BSD install.
Okay. Well, excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show with us today, Lucas. We appreciate you taking the time to answer these questions. And of course, folks who want to learn more about Midnight BSD can hit up midnightbsd.org. And it looks like you have Twitter handled Midnight BSD as well.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Okay, so before we head into the news roundup, of course, we do want to mention one of the other sponsors this week, which is going to be DigitalOcean, and where you can go to digitalocean.com and spin up a droplet, and guess what? You can put FreeBSD in it. How cool is that? Cool. Or if you're adventurous, you can do the alternate method we highlighted a few weeks back on how you could load OpenBSD in it as well. But when you do that and you set up your account, of course you want to use the coupon code FreeBSD now because, hey, $10 credit, that's like 2 months right there. Done. That's a great way to test it out and spin up some droplets and see how DigitalOcean can work for you.
They have quite a range of machines available, everything from half a gig of RAM and 20 gigs of SSD and 1 terabyte of transfer for $5, or 0.7 cents an hour if you only need it temporarily. And then, for $10, you can get a gig of RAM and 30 gigs of SSD and twice as much bandwidth. Or, if you need beefiness, they have, 8 gigs of RAM, 4 CPUs, 80 gigs of SSDs, and 5 terabytes of transfer for just $80 a month, or 11.9 cents an hour.
I might need to set up a Quassel core up there so I don't have to run it here locally. Because that could be handy.
We set up a status page for Scale Engine so that, if our website's ever down or something, we need to post a status message, we have somewhere offsite that can do it. But $5 it's pretty hard to argue with. We'll just set it up over here.
Yeah, that's dirt cheap. Yeah, I may need to do that. I mean, we have so everything's hosted at the house here, which means we're in the county. Lots of trees, which are lots of power lines, and lots of wind and rain means we get a lot of power outages around the year. Probably a half a dozen a year. Some of them last a while too. So it might be nice to have that running somewhere else up in the cloud, and then I can pick my own location with DigitalOcean.
Yes,
so
that too.
If I want to have really low latency to it as well, they can make that happen. Yeah, I went and ran their bandwidth tester here to my house, and it's like saturating my downstream.
Yes.
So I can't complain.
Like we talked about, they have locations in New York, San Francisco, London, Amsterdam, Frankfurt, Singapore. Pretty much anywhere you want to be, they'll have a nice place for it. They also on top of the API and everything, they also have the console which we haven't talked about much before, but that's one of the steps you need in order to take a FreeBSD droplet and reformat it to OpenBSD. Is you can actually get access to the console so that, if your droplet isn't booting because you forgot a quote mark in your rc.conf or something, you don't need their help to fix it. You can just go into the console, fix it up, and be all right. And it just gives you that much more power than you would get if you didn't have that.
That's the kind of stuff I love, where I can do everything I need without picking up the phone and having to call somebody and ask, hey, could you do this? I need permission to do this. No. Do it all through the website on my own. And maybe that's just my style, but that makes me very, very happy. So I will need to find a free weekend, which who knows when that will be, and migrate some of my stuff over there. But you guys don't need to wait that long. If you have the time, go do it now.
Yes.
So go to DigitalOcean.com and again, use FreeBSD Now as your coupon code. Okay, news roundup, Alan. So this one, interesting. This first article here talking about the LaunchD. The LaunchD train's never going to happen. It's never coming.
What?
About having LaunchD on BSD. Did you read this article?
No. Somebody says LaunchD is never coming, but I've seen the port happening.
Yeah. So I was running it here just yesterday with a FreeNAS 10 build. But let me just read the story, then we can give you our opinions on it. But replacement of init systems, of course, have been controversial to say the least in the last couple of years, and systemd, for example. But of course, most of the BSDs have avoided the conflict thus far, but there have been a few efforts made to port over LaunchD from OS X, and the blog details some of those different efforts and why they failed. And then it, of course, gives you the author's opinion on why he thinks we're never going to have LaunchD anytime soon in any of the BSDs. And basically, the core of his argument centers around, well, if you're going to do LaunchD, you got to take out all the mock isms, and it just ends up destroying it when you do that, right?
Not necessarily.
Except I happen to know for a fact people are running LaunchD right now, and what they did is they ported over the mock isms. So apparently there's some traction out there where people want some of those mock calls in the kernel itself.
Because the other one that people can tell you about is that the Mac one was all based on XML. And so one of the other attempts to port LaunchD, I forget which appliance vendor it was, they just stuck the XML parser into the init process itself. So PID1 having an XML parser in it. It's like A, those are easy to crash, and B, those have exploits. That's just a bad idea. But the one in that is going to be in FreeNAS uses JSON, and optionally probably UCL fairly soon. Actually, I'll have the changes for that. I just have to get around to finding time to do it.
Well, so in the article too, he's really pushing the NoSH, or Nosh, as I like to say, program as an alternative to LaunchD. But I think it's neat that there is an alternative. We'll have to wait and see how this all shakes out.
The biggest thing is that, LaunchD is going to be available, and especially appliance vendors like FreeNAS and I think Isilon was also interested. It doesn't necessarily mean that FreeBSD is going to change away from the current rc.d system. You know, for PCBSD, it might make sense. On a server, maybe less so, actually. It really depends on your use case, and I don't see rc.d as an option going away anytime soon. Because I'm perfectly happy with it, and
Yeah, I mean,
I would
there's a
resist
couple
changes.
little nits I have with it is just being able to do things in parallel would be nice, and bringing up networking later and kind of on-demand starting of services. But we'd be curious to hear your thoughts on the matter. I know you guys have given us all your thoughts about the grief with systemd on Linux, but I don't know what people's opinions of LaunchD is, if you guys have played with it at all. But be curious to hear your thoughts. Maybe we'll throw those all into another episode of what people think about the idea of having LaunchD available, or an OSH for that matter. And,
I think the nice things about the BSDs is that oftentimes something like that can just be available without much drama.
It might be nice to get LaunchD in there as an option and have it off by default, just like a lot of new things when they go in, and then give it a year or two to stabilize, and people flip it on by default.
What I probably would even rather see is have it available as a port so that it can be updated more frequently. Because
that definitely
it wouldn't
makes
be able to
sense.
be constantly updated if it was in 10.2. And if it's in the development version of 11, it doesn't get as much exposure.
Yeah,
whereas,
as long as they get all the mock stuff into the kernel and everything,
I guess
then it would definitely be more possible to do a port at that point.
I guess that's the problem, is that it all depends on this other stuff. Although if that could be done as a kernel module or something, then probably not.
I don't think that's possible. Right. I could be wrong, though. One of the guys from IX may correct me on that. But okay, well, interesting enough. Again, let us know your thoughts on the matter. Just curious to know, because again, we've talked a lot about systemd. So how do you guys feel about launched possibly showing up in some of the various BSD projects? Next up, another interesting story here about native SSH coming to, wait for it, Windows.
Yes.
Wow.
It's about time.
Again, I did a double take when I saw that originally. So this may be, as our producer mentions here, this may be the first and last mention of Microsoft on BSD Now, which who knows, maybe they'll do something else.
No, we have to interview some of their people about the interesting things they've done with FreeBSD in the cloud and so on.
Yeah, like Hyper-V and all that. Yeah, that's true.
I imagine a bunch of them will actually be at BSD Camp. We might have to try to corner one.
Oh, yeah. So maybe we'll have to mention Microsoft some more. But this one was kind of out of the blue, though. They just announced that PowerShell is going to be getting native SSH support in the near future.
Well, the interesting thing is
what was that?
Well, it's both. They're going to have it as a client so that in your PowerShell scripts you can SSH to your Linux machine and do stuff, which is great. But apparently they'll also actually allow you to SSH into a Windows machine and get a PowerShell shell and actually manage your Windows machine over SSH.
Yeah, it's only took until 2015, 2016 by the time.
Well, the PowerShell team says they tried to get SSH in PowerShell v1 and v2, but it got rejected by their management both times. But now they have new management, and as we've seen with Microsoft, starting to work with things like Docker and Puppet and so on, they've realized that Windows has to just be a platform that people can use to do stuff.
Yeah, you can just SSH in and start stuff. Yeah, that makes sense. But interestingly enough, they decided not to use a commercial SSH for it. They're saying it's the same one from OpenBSD that we already use pretty much everywhere. So that's interesting that they went that route.
They're pleased to announce that PowerShell team will support and contribute to the OpenSSH community. Although most of the people from OpenSSH we talked to said they hadn't heard anything yet. But it sounds like we could see some interesting things happening.
I wonder if anybody will be at BSDCan or one of the conferences in the future to talk about this. That would be interesting to hear.
But it would be nice for OpenSSH to get more funding and direct support, kind of like OpenSSL did after it caused all those problems, whereas OpenSSH doesn't have this reputation of causing problems. And if it gets the funding earlier, then maybe it never will.
Yep. So, of course, this means you won't have to rely on other utilities like using PuTTY or WinSCP, FileZilla, Cygwin, all those other things that we've had to do to kind of work around the lack of having SSH in Windows.
My best hope is that they'll import, very new OpenSSH, and that means that I'll have a client on my Windows machine that can do, ED 25519, etc.
Yeah,
and have all the newest and greatest stuff. I'm sure Microsoft will find some way to screw it up.
Well, we'll give them the opportunity to do that, Alan. We'll wait and see. We'll reserve judgment. So I guess when did they say this is going to launch? They just said sometime this year. There'll be an update to PowerShell, I guess. That'll include this.
They didn't really say.
Okay.
It's just we finally got approval to do this. We're happy.
Yes. But we will definitely keep an eye on that. I'll be curious to try it out at some point. Okay, next up, we got another blog article talking about moving to FreeBSD, and we like highlighting these when they come around. But this blog post goes through a long-time Linux user's first BSD switching experience. So he starts with, of course, his Linux journey, what preceded this, eventually coming to love more of the customization-friendly systems. But, of course, his journey ended with systemd, which is why we had the conversation about that a little earlier. But he said after doing a bit of research, he gave FreeBSD a try and ended up liking it. And the rest of the post mostly covers, why that is, what were the particular points that he liked.
Yeah, well, coming from Gen 2 Linux, I'm sure he felt more at home with the port system and the mix of binary source. And he definitely liked the FreeBSD man pages. I didn't have the same appreciation for them as I do now, even just a couple of years ago. Once I started trying to program C, the fact that all of the C library stuff is all documented there with examples and stuff, it's just like, wow, somebody put a lot of work into this. Or rather, a lot of people put a lot of work into this.
But he mentions, of course, the separation of the base system, and he said it took him a little while to get used to it, but now he sees the benefit of that, about having your ports being essentially a rolling release in user local, but whereas your stable base system doesn't get touched as often. And he said he was glad he was introduced to the BSD license as well, because it solves the problems he had with the GPL, which it's interesting to hear people say that. But he points you at another excellent article about BSD versus GPL and encourages you to read that. But one of the great quotes here at the end, I'll read the conclusion to you. FreeBSD is now my favorite operating system. All my servers run it. Servers and routers I install for family, friends, and clients run it. The embedded systems in my UAVs run it. So Linux was important to me because it showed me the problems with Windows and taught me to appreciate BSD. Had I grown up with FreeBSD, I doubt I would appreciate it as much as I do. So yeah, definitely a good article there, and it sounds like there will be more coming soon. Hopefully, he plans on writing some more about his experience with the other BSDs and is writing some tutorials as well. So we will keep an eye on that and bring it to you when those show up.
You know, as someone, I was lucky. My first real exposure to Unix was a FreeBSD machine, and then followed it. Then there was a little bit of Linux and back to BSD and so on. But every time I have to use a Linux system, I appreciate BSD. Although part of it is just appreciating all the things I already know about BSD that I don't know about Linux, like how to do this and how to do that. But it's just,
Yeah, the same thing here. It was like my first experience with BSD, and it was, it just works. It made sense. And then went to college and had a few crazy years running different Linux distros, and I was like, this sucks. I want to go back to BSD. So definitely, I see his point there. But of course, as he posts more articles, we'll bring those to you. I'll be curious to hear what he says about some of the other BSDs as well. Okay, it's time for feedback and questions. But of course, before we do that, we do want to mention Tarsnap this week, where you can go get signed up and get your backups running off-site, get them out of your house, which is vulnerable to burning down, flooding, all the usual things with doing your backups at home. But this stores it in the cloud, and the beauty of it is you don't have to worry about who's got access on the remote side. So it's truly a secure way to do the backups. Everything's encrypted before it leaves your system, so before it goes out over the wire. So definitely a much better solution. And of course, the URL for that's going to be tarsnap.com/BSD Now, where you could go get your account created, download the client, and get set up and be doing your backup. And probably, depending on how much you got to back up, you could be done with it before we get through the first question in the next segment.
Well, one of the best things about Tarsnap is the efficiency. The way it was designed, where it does incremental backups, it can actually deduplicate your stuff before it encrypts it and sends it up. And so this allows it to even though I'm backing up quite a bit of data, most of it doesn't change. And so it saves the backup. With most deduplication things, you're using a fixed block size. I say you have a chunk and a chunk and a chunk. And if you change this chunk, if you change one word in a text file, it could be right on the border of a chunk and cause you to have to re-upload both of those whole chunks. But Colin wrote a very fancy mathematical algorithm for finding the smallest differences between the stuff. And so we can actually detect that, just this one word change, I'll just change that, rather than being like, I need to change these whole two 4 kilobyte blocks. So I'm going to have to upload 8 kilobytes because I changed, one word in a sentence. Whereas with his algorithm, it's like, you changed one word, I'll just save that diff. And so makes Tarsnap very efficient. You don't need a special system to be able to detect when the change is only very small. And so it makes it very nice for, say, backing up your laptop because, I wrote a bunch of code on the airplane on the way to the conference. I really would like to back that up in case something happens to my laptop. It gets broken or stolen or whatever while I'm at a conference. Hey, I have a copy. And I'm all good.
Right.
But, conference Wi-Fi.
Back that up over hotel Wi-Fi.
Conference or hotel Wi-Fi is not going to be very fast. So I'm going to want to back up the smallest little tar file that I can. And Tarsnap makes that possible.
Nice. So again, guys, that's tarsnap.com/BSD Now. And of course, when you email or talk to the guys up there, let them know that we sent you. Okay, first up, we have Adam this week, who's doing a follow-up email to the spam list.
Yes.
So you want to read this one, Alan, or you want me to?
Sure. Just give the overview. So Adam says, hi, folks. I had the same issue trying to send email to Gmail or receiving email from Gmail, and the gray listing would reject it, and then Gmail would send it again, but from a different IP that would then get gray listed again and cause emails from Gmail to either never arrive or take hours to arrive instead of, within a couple of minutes. He says, and some other big senders like Yahoo and so on, that Chris had emailed the show about a couple of weeks ago. And he says what he found was BGPD for the from Open BSD and using it to distribute the spam list, which interestingly is what the very first interview we ever did for BSD Now was about. And so this is basically a project. So BGP is designed to share routing tables between routers as efficiently as possible. Well, spam blacklists are lists of IP addresses, which are kind of like routes. That's basically what a routing table is, a giant list of IP addresses and how to get to each one. Instead, this one has a giant list of IP addresses and how evil each one is. So BGPD is a great way to distribute your spam list because you can get updates. It's designed to propagate updates within 5 minutes across the whole internet. Whereas the old way was, hey, everybody, here's a website. Everybody download this list of bad IP addresses once a day. And, people would set up cron jobs and they would always land at like the same time. And that server would get pounded on for a couple of minutes every day and then be idle the rest of the time. Whereas BGP SpamD allowed you to push stuff, both whitelist and blacklist out very quickly. He has a blog post that he mentions, and it talks about actually using the BGP SpamD to distribute whitelists for large email servers as well, not just for the blacklist, so that he knows, hey, this is Gmail or Yahoo will accept that, or hey, this is a spammer, will reject that, and so on. And he says...
and he provides the commands and what it looks like here as he does that as well.
And he says, in general, it works a lot better than gray listing, or used in combination with gray listing with the whitelist, you would at least make sure that Gmail is not getting that same inconvenience.
Okay. Well, he says he hopes this helps Chris out, so hopefully that helps answer your question and gives you another solution to this.
Yes, I guess we were remiss in not pointing this one out when it was mentioned, but you also check out bgp-spamd.net for the code and everything to be able to do this yourself.
Okay. Well, see, I wanted to take the next one, Al. That's why I asked you to read that, because this one annoys me. But anyway, next up is Dan, who's asking about doing a PF DMZ zone. So he says, hey, guys, I've currently got an issue with my OpenBSD router that I'm hoping you'll be able to help me with. I've been trying to play online games with my Wii U, and it's not working. The error code that I get on my Wii U has failed to connect a partner's device because the partner did not respond. Unfortunately, Nintendo's documentation lacks any information on the specific ports to redirect. The way I used to do things on my store-bought router was just to put the Wii U in an external-facing DMZ with what I assume was full unfiltered access to the internet. I've been struggling to find a way to do this with PF. Any assistance you guys can provide is greatly appreciated, and please keep up the great work. Okay, so before I answer my rant here, I've been working on this same problem with my brother's system because he's got a FreeBSD router and using IPFW, and my kids here have a Wii U and the same problem. Nintendo, you suck. You suck hard. Your documentation sucks. And the fact that your answer is open up every single UDP port or put your Wii U on a DMZ means, hey, the 3DS now can't connect. That's fantastic.
So the biggest problem with with what the store-bought routers call a DMZ, which is actually not a real DMZ, is where you have multiple servers and they're separated, segregated from your home LAN. Whereas in these little commercial routers, what it means is
forward everything.
If any incoming packet doesn't match an existing port forwarding rule, forward it to this machine, which is not segregated like it would be in a real DMZ. But anyway,
anyway, sorry, I'm raging a little bit about this because I've been on the phone with my brother and we're trying to figure this out. And I'm just like, there's got to be a better way to do this. Like, forward these ports over. Like, come on. PlayStation's been able to do this forever. Xbox 360's been able to do this forever. But the Wii U, the best answer they get is forward port 1 through 65,000, whatever it is, to your Wii U, which just is horrible. Yeah. But
It's like, that's great as long as you only have one device that you ever want to do that with.
Yes.
And it's not great ever, actually. But yeah.
Yeah. So we've been, there's been some traffic off, online talking about this as well. And I think, did we end up coming up with a fix for him?
TJ sent him a bunch of different options. But yeah, I think in general, it's fairly easy to do here's all my existing port forwards, and then the last one is just forward everything else to my Wii U. But it's like, I don't really want to have my whole Wii U hanging out on the internet getting pounded on either.
Oh my gosh, this has made me so angry the last couple of days, and it's like kind of forcing me like, well, do I set up UPnPD or something like that? Mm-hmm. But I don't want to run UPnPD. I'm not a big fan of that either. The lack of security there, just horrible, absolutely horrible. So every other device on my network, PS4 and whatnot, I just forward over the 4 ports it needs or whatever, and it just works. So. Anyway, Nintendo, get your crap together. It's just this is terrible.
It doesn't make sense almost ever to just be using, we just use whatever random port we feel like.
Yeah.
It seems very easy to just have a couple. Although part of the problem might be that it comes down to depending on individual games decide what they want to do or something.
I think that's part of the problem. Nintendo's lack of having a coherent network infrastructure means that game developers are just choosing stuff at random, which is why when you Google it, everyone's like, well, for this one game, I opened these ports and I think that worked, kind of, sort of. We can't tell because when you call Nintendo, they have no clue.
Well, yeah, it's like, well, we could do a packet capture and see what the game's trying to do. Or what TJ had Dan doing was looking at his PF logs to see what was getting denied. But it didn't look like there was any pattern to what ports were being used. And then it's just
that's
like,
part
really?
of the problem here. My kids went and got Splatoon this last week, and that's what they're trying to play. And it, 95% of the time when they connect, it's like failed to connect. So anyway, I need to figure out how to do the same thing with IPFW, actually. So if there's any IPFW fans out there, post me the one-liner you use to forward all ports to the Wii U or whatever. I'm just curious to see.
Yeah, it would look like your existing port forwarding rule, but just have every port and just come after all the other ones.
Yeah, that's annoying. Yeah. But anyway, I'm sorry. I had to rage about that for a little bit, guys, because this has personally affected me this last week. Because when my kids can't play their games, Daddy, can't do this, can't do that. And I'm like, I don't want to go look at logs and figure out what ports it's using.
Exactly.
Anyway, I digress. But bottom line is, Nintendo, you suck. Yep. So anyway, moving on. Ivan writes in about asking about packages versus ports. He says, I've recently returned to and been catching up with FreeBSD. I started using FreeBSD 3.3 to build faster, more stable routers than Linux counterparts I've been using. I assume that was 9.3 or maybe that was way back in the day. Okay. He said, I ended up using less FreeBSD as I put more career miles into other things, but I'm happy to be getting more FreeBSD in my life. Thank you for the podcast to help me fill in my gaps. He said, I've always used ports or packages and worked to not mix the two. This seems to be a best common practices today. What are your opinions on choosing packages versus ports versus mixing the two? First up, I agree. Don't mix the two.
Oh, okay.
But that's my personal preference. It seems like once you go down that road, you regret it later. Every time we've done that, we've had problems down the road.
Especially in the past, it was a huge no-no because the packages were just not in line at all. Nowadays, if your packages on vanilla FreeBSD, your packages are usually never more than a week out of sync with the ports tree, and so it's kind of okay. What I really love if they ever finish that feature to actually distribute the ports tree as a package or something, so that you could just get the version of the ports tree that was used with those packages, and then everything would be perfectly in sync, and you would easily be able to just use the same thing that the package repo is.
Well, my recommendation is just use packages, but build them yourself. Yeah. If you're already going to build the port anyway, just build.
Yeah. If you are going to build the ports yourself, Poudriere will do it faster than the ports tree. And more consistently, and it lets you answer all the questions up front. And that's what we've been doing at Scale Engine. Is we have our own custom package repo, and we have complete control that way. For example, this week there were 2 new ports we created that hadn't been approved to be committed yet, but they're in our ports tree, and they got built packages for them.
Yep. But let's see. He says, so far I've resolved some of the issues with a port depending on a later version of a package by upgrading that package.
Well, that's possible. The biggest thing. Cherry picking upgrades does not work very well with packages.
It gets ugly.
Yeah. Basically, yeah. If you are going to do it, I recommend that you do package upgrade and update everything and try to sync doing your package upgrade and your port update at the same time. So grab your copy of the ports tree that kind of lines up with what was in the package database or repo. That's the other. If they don't include the ports tree in package somehow, they could at least just the repo. One of the metadata pieces for the repo could be the revision number of the ports tree they used, so you could get the same one. That would really be helpful, I think.
He's also talking here about the DigitalOcean image starts out with quite a few packages, and then he sends us the output. And he was wondering whether using ports is going to be more troublesome or if he should remove some of the bundled ones and replace with ports.
The bundled ones are set up... well, they're using the vanilla FreeBSD package repos, so replacing them with a port shouldn't hurt, but be careful about replacing or breaking any of these because, for example, there's the one there, have a high auto IPD. That's how you get the IP address for your Docker or your DigitalOcean. Okay. So if you break that package or uninstall it and reboot, you won't get an IP address. They don't use DHCP. They use this auto IPD link level or link layer address configuration thing, so that they can. I think it's because some VMs can actually have more than one IP address, and that doesn't work with DHCP, and a bunch of other stuff. And that's why they have rping in there because the script has to do something to resolve a MAC address or something. Because it downloads the auto configuration data from the IP address 169.254.169.254, which is a fairly standard thing to do for cloud stuff. I think Amazon came up with it originally. So yeah, when the machine boots up, it's using all this stuff to actually download. I forget if it's XML or JSON or something, some encoded version of the setup data for your VM, and then processing it, and that's why you end up needing, Avahai and all of the dependencies and Perl and Python in order to start up the VM, is because of all of the cloud orchestration stuff that's happening. So I would not recommend removing any of those things because the next time you reboot the DigitalOcean instance, it might not start up properly without them.
Well, there's your answer there. Put stuff in jail so you can manage it yourself. Just don't screw around with maybe the base system.
That is actually not a bad idea.
Yeah. That's how I would do it, just so you're not touching those or getting tempted to touch those. Okay. Well, next up we have Josh. He says, how many times will people ask this? But he says, I love to hear you guys talk about how you feel about ZFS on laptops. My main concern is with the info that's out there about the possibility of undetected data corruption when using non-ECC RAM. Do you guys worry about running ZFS on machines that do not have ECC RAM? It doesn't keep me up at night.
No.
If that's what you're wondering, I run ZFS on everything here. Every single system I have. I don't think I have. Maybe one of the servers in the shed has ECC memory, I think, still. But everything else doesn't.
Everybody who's ever said bad things about it has mostly been talking about theoretically what could go wrong, not things that have actually gone wrong.
In general, when you have memory corruption, you got everything's susceptible to that, right?
So basically, if your worry is that non-ECC RAM is going to cause your file system to get corrupted, not using ZFS isn't going to help you there, right? If you're using any other file system, it's going to get corrupted just as badly as ZFS.
Yeah.
And so in that case, you're missing out on all the other features of ZFS in order to avoid a non-ECC RAM corrupting your file system when it's going to corrupt whatever file system you're using. It doesn't make any sense. So I think Matt Aaron's quote was, using ZFS on a system without ECC RAM is still better than using any other file system without ECC RAM.
Sure. So it was just a non-issue for me. Again, I don't worry about this at all. I've never been bitten
butter
by
FS
it.
FUD is what it is.
Yeah. So anyway, we got to get over this, guys. If you don't have ECC RAM, don't have access to it, just run your system just like you would with anything else.
If you have the option of ECC RAM, it's probably worth it, right? If the reason you're using ZFS is because your files are important to you, then that's why you should also be using ECC RAM. But if you can't, if it's your laptop and you don't even have a mirror, then, back up your files instead. It's all you're going to do.
That's what you do, right? A meteor coming down and hitting your server will also ruin your day. Exactly. That's what backups are for.
But yes, if it's a server, it's better to have ECC. But
definitely. Okay, well, Josh, hopefully we've put this issue to bed once and for all, and we won't have to worry about this in the future, but I'm sure somebody will ask, so we'll keep answering it.
Yes, but we answered this question in the ZFS book as well, with the proper quote from Matt that I didn't just misremember. But anyway.
Okay. So cool. Well, as we wrap up the show here, guys, of course, we want to remind you to send all your questions or comments, show ideas or topics or stories you want mentioned on the show to feedback@bsdnow.tv. We're going out of town next week for BSD Can, so it might be a week or two before we get those in. But do send them, and we'll get them in the queue.
Yes, we love having a queue of questions because when we run out, we look silly.
That's right. But also we want to mention there's a new Libra SSL mailing list that has arrived for discussions and announcements, and we have the link to that here where that's located over on the OpenBSD lists. Go ahead and subscribe if you're interested, because it'd be a good way to keep in touch with everyone. And as we mentioned, next week we're going to be gone, so there's going to be a pre-recorded episode next week while we're in BSD Can, so we hope you guys enjoy that. And of course, we'll look forward to when we get back telling you how everything went. We'll be exhausted and tired, but be full of stories, and we'll forget all the cool ones and then tell them in the following weeks as well.
But yes, if you can't make it, you'll live vicariously through us, but also be horribly jealous of us.
Yes, and we will, of course, be sure to tell you when the videos start landing as well, because it's neat. You got to go watch the Dev Summit video if you've not, just the have, needs, wants. I really find that interesting, just to hear about who's doing what and what features are cooking in different parts of the world, different companies.
The have, need, want is the vendor summit, but yes.
Yep, during the vendor summit. Oh, they're not.
I don't know about that one. Probably.
Okay. Well, hopefully they will, because that's one of the ones I enjoy as well.
And that's the one I'm going to miss because my session's at the same time as it.
Oh, bummer. Yeah, I will be a part of the vendor summit for sure. So, of course, if you're interested in doing an interview at the conference, we know a lot of you guys who watch might actually be there. So we can interview you in person, which is more fun because we get to all sit together and it's just easier and no technical difficulties and whatnot.
Also, I just got a new webcam that has a wider angle, so you won't have to sit on Chris's lap.
There you go, right? So you definitely want to do the interviews now. This is a good time. So send us an email now, and we can start preparing questions ahead of time.
Yes, that'd be great.
So if you know you're going to be there and want to do the interview in person, let's get that scheduled. So again, look forward to seeing some of you guys out there at BSD Can, and thanks for watching this week.